The rain had been falling over Chicago since dawn, turning the airport windows into long walls of silver. Travelers rushed through Terminal C with expensive luggage, hurried voices, and tired faces that barely noticed the people cleaning behind them. Shoes clicked against polished marble floors while loudspeakers repeated boarding announcements every few minutes. Somewhere near Gate 24, a woman in a faded blue janitor uniform pushed a cleaning cart slowly across the terminal, her movements calm and practiced, as if she had learned how to disappear inside crowded places. Her name was Elena Carter. At 32 years old, Alana had mastered the art of being unnoticed. She cleaned coffee spills before anyone complained. She picked up trash people dropped without apology. She smiled politely even when travelers ignored her greeting completely. Airport had become her whole world over the past 4 years. Every hallway, every gate, every quiet corner during night shifts felt painfully familiar. She stopped near a row of empty seats and leaned lightly on the mop handle, rubbing her tired wrist. Her shift had started before sunrise, and her feet already ached inside worn-out sneakers. Across the glass wall, airplanes moved slowly through the rain like giant shadows disappearing into clouds. "You need a break," a warm voice said behind her. Alina turned and smiled faintly at an older woman carrying cleaning supplies. "Breaks are expensive these days, Maria." Maria shook her head. "You always say that." "Because it's true." Maria lowered her voice. "Your landlord finally stopped bothering you." Elena gave a quiet laugh without humor. "No, he just found new ways to threaten me." Maria's face softened with concern. "I still don't know how you manage all this alone." For a second, Elena looked toward the rain outside the terminal windows. "You do what you have to do." Maria studied her friend carefully. Elena always answered pain with calmness. It was one of the things people admired most about her. Even after years of struggle, she still carried kindness in her voice. "You know," Maria said gently, "someone like you deserves better than this place." Elena smiled sadly. "Maybe this place deserves better than me too." Before Maria could respond, a loud announcement echoed through the terminal. "Attention all staff. Please prepare for the arrival of Hartwell Aviation executives in Terminal C VIP entrance." Immediately the energy around them shifted. Security guards straightened their jackets. Airport managers hurried across the floor speaking into radios. Workers whispered excitedly among themselves. Maria's eyes widened. "That billionaire is coming today." "What billionaire?" "Adrian Hartwell." "You seriously haven't heard about him?" Elena shook her head while wringing water from the mop. Maria looked shocked. "He owns Hartwell Aviation, hotels too. Half the city probably belongs to him. They say he's one of the youngest billionaires in America." Elena shrugged lightly. "Rich people pass through here every day, not like him. Women online are obsessed with him." "That sounds exhausting." Maria laughed. "You really don't care about money, do you?" Elena stared quietly at the floor for a moment before answering. "I used to." The words carried more sadness than she intended. Maria noticed it immediately. "You're thinking about him again." Elena didn't answer. There had only ever been one man capable of changing her expression like that. Lucas Bennett. Even after 15 years, his name still lived somewhere deep inside her heart like a scar that never fully healed. Then they had been inseparable in a small town called Ashford Hills. Everyone believed they would grow old together someday. Lucas had been the boy with impossible dreams and a stubborn smile. Elena had been the girl who believed in him before anyone else did. They used to sit beside the lake behind their high school and talk about escaping poverty together. Lucas promised her that one day he would build something extraordinary. One day. He used to whisper while holding her hand, "I'll give you a life where you never have to worry again." At 17, Elena believed every word. At 19, Lucas left Ashford Hills to chase opportunity in New York. At 20, Elena stopped hearing from him completely. Life moved brutally after that. Her mother got sick. Medical bills destroyed everything they had. Then came the funeral. Then debt, survival. Dreams slowly disappeared beneath responsibility. And somewhere during all those painful years, Elena convinced herself Lucas had forgotten her. Maybe he had needed to. Maybe success required leaving certain people behind. Elena, Maria's voice pulled her back to the present. You disappeared again. Sorry. Maria gave her shoulder a gentle squeeze. Whatever happened with that boy, it's in the past. Elena nodded softly. But some memories never really become the past. The terminal suddenly erupted with movement near the VIP entrance. Several black SUVs pulled up outside the glass doors while security officers formed lines nearby. Employees began whispering excitedly. He's here. Maria immediately fixed her hair. Elena sighed quietly. You're acting like a celebrity is arriving. For billionaires, that's basically the same thing. Curious travelers gathered near the entrance while cameras flashed outside. Then the doors opened. A tall man stepped inside surrounded by security guards and assistants in expensive suits. The atmosphere shifted instantly around him. Stared openly as he walked through the terminal with calm confidence. Elena kept her eyes lowered while pushing her cleaning cart toward the opposite hallway. Wealthy executives usually ignored workers like her anyway. But something about the man's voice stopped her. Delay the Seattle meeting until tomorrow morning. Deep. Familiar. Her hand froze against the cart handle. No, it couldn't be. Slowly, almost afraid to confirm it, Elena turned her head slightly toward the crowd. The man removed his dark coat while speaking to an assistant beside him. And suddenly the world around her disappeared. Lucas Bennett, older now. Broader shoulders, sharper features. A tailored black suit worth more than her yearly salary. But unmistakably him. Elena's chest tightened so suddenly she could barely breathe. For 15 years she had imagined this moment in hundreds of different ways. Sometimes she imagined screaming at him. Sometimes crying. Sometimes pretending not to know him at all. But now that he stood only 20 feet away, she felt completely frozen. He looked nothing like the poor boy from Ashford Hills anymore. He looked powerful, untouchable, like someone who belonged to another universe entirely. Around him, assistants rushed nervously while airport managers practically bowed during introductions. Mr. Bennett, we're honored to have you here. Lucas answered politely but distractedly, barely glancing at anyone around him. Elena lowered her head immediately and grabbed the mop again, praying he wouldn't notice her. Not like this. Not wearing a janitor uniform. Not exhausted and broken, while he looked like the kind of man magazines wrote about. Her hands trembled slightly as she cleaned the floor faster. Please don't recognize me. But fate had always enjoyed cruelty. As Lucas walked past, his eyes caught her reflection in the polished marble floor. Something about the woman kneeling beside the cleaning cart pulled at him instantly. He slowed. His assistant noticed immediately. Sir, Lucas didn't answer. Because for one impossible second, the woman looked painfully familiar. A memory stirred somewhere deep inside him. Brown eyes, gentle face, quiet sadness. His heartbeat changed. Slowly he turned his head. Elena kept her eyes down, hoping desperately he would continue walking. Then she heard footsteps approaching. Every nerve inside her body tightened. Excuse me, a deep voice said softly. Her breath stopped completely. 15 years disappeared in an instant. No matter how much time had passed, she would always recognize that voice. Elena lifted her eyes slowly. Lucas stood directly in front of her now. Up close, the years became even more visible, a few faint lines near his eyes. A maturity in his expression that hadn't existed before. But his eyes were exactly the same. The same eyes that once looked at her like she was the center of his entire world. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Airport noise faded into silence around them. Lucas stared at her carefully, almost like he couldn't trust what he was seeing. "Elena?" he whispered finally. Hearing her name in his voice, after all these years, shattered something inside her chest. She swallowed hard. "Hi, Lucas." The sound of her voice seemed to hit him harder than expected. His expression changed completely. Shock, recognition, real, unmistakable guilt. "My God," he breathed quietly. Elena forced a small smile despite the storm inside her heart. "You look different." Lucas stared at her janitor uniform, briefly before looking back into her eyes. Whatever he saw there made his face tighten painfully. "So do you," he said softly. An awkward silence followed. 15 years of absence stood between them like a wall neither knew how to cross. Finally, Lucas spoke again. "I thought about you for years." Elena looked away quickly. "That makes one of us." The words escaped before she could stop them. Lucas flinched slightly. Before either could continue, a sharp voice interrupted nearby. "Ma'am, you're blocking the VIP walkway." A security officer approached impatiently while gesturing toward Elena's cleaning cart. "She needs to move." Elena immediately stepped back. "Sorry." But Lucas's expression darkened instantly. "It's fine," he said firmly. Officer hesitated. "Sir, protocol." "I said it's fine." The calm authority in Lucas's voice ended the discussion immediately. The officer nodded awkwardly and walked away. Elena felt heat rise in her cheeks from embarrassment. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes," Lucas said quietly. "I did." For a moment they simply looked at each other again. Then Lucas asked the question she had feared most. "What happened to you?" Elena forced another small smile. "Life." Lucas stared at her as if the single word hurt more than any explanation could have. Around them, passengers continued rushing through the terminal without realizing two completely different worlds had just collided beside Gate 24. Elena reached for the mop again, desperate for something ordinary to hold on to. "I should get back to work," she said quietly. Lucas didn't move aside. "You disappeared." Elena almost laughed at the irony. "I disappeared." His jaw tightened slightly. "I came back to Ashford Hills after my second year in New York. Your house was empty." Her fingers stopped against the mop handle.
"You came back?"
"Yes." The answer hit her harder than expected. For years she had convinced herself he never returned because he simply forgot her. That version of the story had been easier to survive. "My mother was already sick by then," Elena said carefully. "Why lost the house after the hospital bills?" Lucas looked stunned. "Nobody told me." "There wasn't anyone left to tell you." The sadness in her voice landed like a weight between them. A loudspeaker announced boarding nearby, while travelers passed around them, carrying expensive bags and half-finished coffees. Elena suddenly became painfully aware of how different they looked standing together. Lucas appeared like a man built for magazine covers and private meetings. She looked exhausted, underpaid, invisible. He noticed her discomfort immediately. "Can we talk somewhere else?" Elena hesitated. Part of her wanted to run before old feelings reopened completely. Another part had waited 15 years for this conversation. "I only have 10 minutes before my supervisor notices." "That's enough." Lucas gestured toward a quieter hallway beside the executive lounge. Elena followed reluctantly, while pushing the cleaning cart beside her. Employees openly stared as the billionaire walked beside a janitor like they belonged together somehow. Whispers spread instantly.
"Do they know each other?"
"Who is she?" "Why is Mr. Bennett talking to airport staff?" Elena kept her eyes lowered. She hated attention, especially this kind. When they finally reached a quieter corner overlooking the rain, covered runway. Lucas turned toward her fully. For a moment he simply looked at her. Not at the uniform, not at the cleaning supplies, at her. And somehow that felt more overwhelming than anything else. "You still tuck your hair behind your ear when you're nervous," he said softly. Elena blinked in surprise and quickly lowered her hand. "You remember that?" "I remember everything." The answer came too fast, too honestly. Elena looked away toward the airplanes outside. Silence stretched between them before Lucas spoke again. "I wrote to you." Her head turned immediately. "What?" "After New York. I wrote dozens of times." Elena frowned in confusion. "I never got anything." Lucas stared at her carefully. "Not one letter." She shook her head slowly. For the first time since recognizing her, genuine confusion appeared across his face. "I don't understand. My mother changed hospitals twice before she died." Elena explained quietly. "We moved apartments constantly after that. Half our mail disappeared." Lucas ran a hand slowly across his jaw, processing the information. "All these years," he muttered. "I thought you stopped answering because you moved on." Elena let out a soft breath filled with old pain. "I thought you became successful and forgot where you came from." Their eyes met again, and suddenly 15 years of misunderstanding stood exposed between them. Lucas looked devastated by it. "Elena." But before he could continue, another voice interrupted nearby. Mr. Bennett. A sharply dressed woman approached, quickly carrying a tablet and several documents. She stopped immediately after noticing Elena. "We need your signature before the board call starts." Lucas barely glanced at the papers. "Later. The investors are already waiting." "They can keep waiting." The assistant looked visibly uncomfortable. Her eyes flicked briefly toward Elena's janitor uniform before returning to Lucas. "This concerns the Hartwell acquisition," I said later, Vanessa. The woman nodded stiffly and walked away. Elena crossed her arms lightly. Important people probably shouldn't ignore $1 billion meetings for airport janitors. "You were never just anything to me." The words arrived instantly, effortlessly, and they hit Elena harder than she wanted. She looked down quickly. "That was a long time ago." "Not for me." His voice carried a quiet honesty she wasn't prepared for. The dangerous thing about Lucas Bennett had never been his charm. It was how sincere he sounded when speaking directly from his heart. Even at 17, he could make impossible promises feel real. Elena forced herself to stay guarded. "You have an entire empire now, Lucas. And none of it mattered 5 minutes ago, when I saw you on your knees cleaning this floor." The emotion in his voice surprised both of them. Elena looked at him carefully. For the first time since the reunion, she noticed exhaustion behind his polished appearance. The kind that expensive suits and wealth couldn't fully hide. "You don't look happy," she said quietly. Lucas gave a humorless smile. "I'm good at pretending." Something about the answer felt painfully familiar. They stood silently beside the rain, covered glass for several seconds. Then Lucas asked softly, "Did you ever marry?" Elena shook her head once. "No." His expression shifted almost imperceptibly with relief. "You?" A faint bitterness crossed his face. "I got engaged once." Elena's chest tightened despite herself. "What happened?" "Ooh, she loved my last name more than me." The sadness behind the statement made Elena look at him differently. For years she imagined Lucas living a perfect, glamorous life somewhere far away. She never considered loneliness might have followed him too. "You?" He asked the question gently this time. Elena shrugged faintly. "Life became busy surviving." The answer hurt him visibly. "You deserved better than surviving." She laughed softly without humor. "Most people at this airport do." Lucas looked around slowly at the workers, rushing through long shifts, while wealthy travelers barely acknowledged them. For the first time, he seemed to really notice the invisible machinery keeping everything running. Then his eyes returned to Alina. "How long have you worked here?" "Almost 4 years. And before that? Restaurants, hotels, grocery stores, wherever people needed someone desperate enough to work overtime." Every sentence tightened something deeper inside Lucas. The girl who once dreamed of becoming a teacher now cleaned floors 12 hours a day beneath fluorescent airport lights, 'cause he wasn't there. Guilt settled heavily across his face. "Elena," he said carefully, "I should have looked harder for you." She met his eyes directly this time. "And I should have hated you less." The honesty startled them both. Lucas stepped slightly closer. "You hated me?" "For a while. You had every right?" "I know." A sad smile appeared briefly between them. Then Elena checked the clock nearby and sighed softly. "I really need to get back." Lucas looked almost frustrated by time itself. "Can I see you again?" She hesitated immediately. Old emotions were dangerous, especially around someone who once held her entire heart. "I don't know if that's a good idea." "Why?" "Because one look at you already ruined 15 years of trying to forget you." But she couldn't say that aloud. Our lives are different now. Lucas glanced at her uniform again before meeting her eyes firmly. "That doesn't matter to me. It should." "Why?" "Because people like you don't end up with people like me anymore." The sentence came out more painfully than intended. Lucas looked genuinely shaken by it. "People like you." Elena gestured lightly toward herself. "I clean floors, Lucas. And you own half the city." His voice became softer. "And somehow you still think that changes who you are." "It changes how the world sees me." "I don't care about the world." "That's easy to say when the world already chose you." The words landed harder than she meant them to. Lucas went quiet, because deep down, he knew she was right. Success had protected him from many forms of humiliation Elena faced daily. People listened when he entered rooms. People respected him automatically. Meanwhile, Elena spent entire shifts being ignored. The difference between them wasn't just money anymore. It was visibility. Before either could continue, Elena's supervisor appeared from across the terminal looking irritated. "There you are, Mr." Collins walked toward them quickly before freezing in shock after recognizing Lucas Bennett standing beside his employee. "Oh my God, Mr." Lucas nodded politely. Mr. Collins immediately straightened his tie nervously. "I didn't realize there was an issue." "There isn't," Lucas answered calmly. The supervisor looked suspiciously between them. "Alana, your section still needs cleaning before the Denver arrival." "I was just going back." "Mr." Collins lowered his voice sharply toward her. "Then go." Lucas noticed the tone immediately. His expression cooled several degrees. "She was helping me." The supervisor almost stumbled over his response. "Of course. Absolutely. I just meant, it's fine." Mr. Collins nodded too quickly. "Yes, sir. Completely fine." Elena grabbed the cleaning cart, desperate to escape the growing attention around them. "I should finish my shift." Lucas looked at her carefully. "What time do you get off?" She hesitated. 8. "I'll wait." "You don't have to." "I know." Something about the certainty in his voice made her heart beat painfully harder. Mr. Collins stared openly now, clearly trying to understand why one of the richest men in America looked at his janitor employee like she mattered more than business meetings. Alina felt exposed beneath everyone's curiosity. "Lucas, 8 o'clock," he repeated gently. For reasons she couldn't fully explain, Alina nodded. "Okay." Relief flickered briefly across his face. Then she pushed the cleaning cart away before emotions overwhelmed her completely. As Alina disappeared back into the crowded terminal, whispers immediately erupted among nearby workers.
Did you see that?
He knows her. Why would a billionaire wait for a janitor? Lucas barely noticed any of it, because his eyes remained fixed on Elena, moving through the airport with quiet dignity, despite years of struggle trying to crush her. And somewhere deep inside him, an old promise began waking back up, the same promise he made beside a lake in Ashford Hills when they were both too young to understand how cruel life could become. I'll come back for you someday. 15 years late, but maybe not too late. Across the terminal, Elena kept pushing the cart steadily forward, while her hands trembled slightly against the handle. She had spent years teaching herself not to think about Lucas Bennett, years convincing herself first love belonged only to the past. But now his voice lived inside her chest again, and the worst part terrified her most. After everything life had done to her, one look from him still felt like home. For the rest of her shift, Elena could barely focus on work. Every few minutes she caught herself replaying the reunion in her head, the shock in Lucas's eyes, the way his voice softened when he said her name, the guilt he didn't bother hiding, and worst of all, the warmth she still felt around him after all these years. It frightened her, because feelings like that had once destroyed her completely. Elena. Maria's voice interrupted her thoughts near gate 12. You missed a trash bin back there. Oh, sorry. Maria narrowed her eyes suspiciously while helping her replace a liner bag. You've been floating around like a ghost for an hour. What happened with the billionaire? Nothing. That kind of nothing doesn't make a woman blush every 5 minutes. Elena sighed quietly. It's complicated. Maria leaned closer immediately. You know him? We grew up together. Maria almost dropped the trash bag.
What?
It was a long time ago. The billionaire was your childhood boyfriend. Elena rubbed her forehead tiredly. Please don't say it that loudly. Maria lowered her voice but looked even more excited now. This is unbelievable. No wonder he looked at you like that. He didn't look at me any type of way. Maria gave her a look filled with disbelief. Elena, I'm 62 years old. I know what it looks like when a man still loves someone. The words hit harder than Elena expected. No, she said quickly. You don't understand. Then explain. Elena glanced around the busy terminal before speaking quietly. We were kids from the same poor town. He left to build a future and actually did it. I stayed behind and life happened. Maria studied her carefully. You still love him. Elena looked down immediately. That doesn't matter anymore. Maria softened. Oh, sweetheart. Before Elena could respond, airport employee rushed toward them. Elena, your supervisor's looking for you. Why? No idea. He looks nervous. Confused, Elena pushed the cart toward the administrative hallway. Halfway there, she noticed airport staff whispering unusually loudly around television screens mounted across the terminal. Some recognized her immediately. Others stared openly. Her stomach tightened. What now? When she reached the management office, Mr. Collins stood near the doorway adjusting his tie repeatedly. Elena, he said too politely. She frowned slightly. You wanted to see me? Yes. Come inside. That alone felt strange. Supervisors rarely invited janitors into offices unless something was wrong. The moment Elena stepped inside, she froze. Lucas sat near the conference table speaking quietly with 2 airport executives. Every person in the room turned toward her. Elena? Lucas said gently, standing immediately. Mr. Collins looked almost terrified now. Mr. Bennett requested your presence. Elena blinked in confusion. My presence. One of the executives smiled awkwardly. Please sit. She remained standing. What's happening? Lucas exchanged a quick glance with the executives before answering. I asked them questions about employee conditions here. Elena frowned slightly. What kind of questions? The kind I should have been asking years ago. One executive quickly added, Mr. Bennett is considering a major partnership expansion with the airport. Lucas kept his eyes on Elena, and I realized the people working here deserve better support. Understanding slowly dawned across her face. You did this because of me. Partly. The honesty in his answer unsettled her. Mr. Collins cleared his throat nervously. Mr. Bennett has generously proposed funding new healthcare benefits and scholarship programs for airport staff. Elena stared at Lucas in disbelief. You barely saw me 2 hours ago. And 2 hours ago I realized how blind I've been. Something about the guilt in his voice made the room suddenly uncomfortable. The executives quietly excused themselves moments later, clearly sensing personal history beneath the conversation. As soon as the door closed, Elena crossed her arms. You can't save everyone because you feel bad. Lucas stepped closer carefully. This isn't guilt charity. Then what is it? His eyes searched hers for several seconds. A second chance to become someone you would have been proud of. The answer hit too personally. Elena looked away toward the office window. You already became successful. That's not the same thing. Silence settled briefly. Then Lucas asked quietly, Did you really think I forgot you? Elena laughed softly without humor. You vanished, Lucas. I was building a company from nothing. So was I. Except mine was called survival. The pain behind the sentence cut straight through him. He ran a hand slowly through his hair, frustrated with himself. You should have called me. With what phone? Which apartment? During which eviction notice? Lucas closed his eyes briefly. Every detail she revealed seemed to expose another chapter of suffering he never knew existed. When he looked at her again, his voice had softened completely. I'm sorry I wasn't there. Elena swallowed against unexpected emotion. For a long time I wanted to hear you say that. And now, she hesitated honestly. Now I don't know what I feel. Lucas nodded slowly like he understood. A knock interrupted the moment. Vanessa stepped inside holding another tablet. Sir, the board meeting cannot be delayed again. Lucas barely glanced toward her. 5 more minutes. Vanessa looked visibly uncomfortable. The investors flew in from London. They'll survive. Her eyes shifted briefly toward Elena before returning to Lucas. This acquisition affects the entire company. Lucas's expression hardened slightly. Then they can wait 5 more minutes. Vanessa nodded stiffly and exited. Elena watched the exchange quietly. She hates me already. No, she hates losing control of schedules. She looked at me like I don't belong here. Lucas stepped closer. You belong wherever you decide to stand. The intensity in his voice made Elena's chest tighten unexpectedly. She changed the subject quickly. What exactly do you do now? Lucas gave a faint smile. Mostly attend meetings I don't enjoy. That can't be all. He leaned lightly against the conference table. I started with one cargo plane after college. Took every risk possible, slept in offices, lost almost everything twice. And somehow became a billionaire. Somehow became exhausted. Elena studied him carefully again. The loneliness she noticed earlier felt even clearer now beneath his polished image. When was the last time you were happy? She asked quietly. The question caught him off guard. He thought for a moment, then smiled sadly. Ashford Hills, probably. The answer settled between them heavily, because, despite everything life had done afterward, those years together remained the happiest memories for both of them. Lucas looked at her carefully.
Do you ever think about the lake?
All the time. The old dock, and the terrible sandwiches you used to make. He laughed softly for the first time since seeing her. You still hated my cooking. It was basically burnt bread. You still ate it. Because you looked offended when I didn't. Their eyes met again, and suddenly the years between them felt dangerously smaller. Elena looked away first. We were different people then. No, Lucas said quietly. We were ourselves then. The sentence lingered painfully in the room. Because deep down, both knew adulthood had forced them into roles neither fully recognized anymore. Lucas became powerful because he had to survive ambition. Elena became invisible because she had to survive grief. Neither outcome felt fair. A soft buzz sounded from Lucas's phone again. This time he ignored it completely. Elena noticed. You should probably handle your business. You matter more right now. The simplicity of the statement shook her. Nobody had spoken to her like that in years. Not with certainty. Not like her existence alone deserved attention. She looked down quickly before emotion betrayed her face. You always knew exactly what to say. Only around you. Silence stretched gently between them. Then Elena checked the clock. My shift ends in 30 minutes. Lucas straightened slightly. Good. What happens after that? His expression softened. She blinked. Lucas, not a charity dinner. Not pity. Just two people who lost 15 years. Elena hesitated immediately. Every instinct warned her this was dangerous. Old love mixed with unresolved pain rarely ended well, but another quieter voice inside her whispered something equally true. You already lost him once. Finally she exhaled slowly. One dinner. Relief flickered visibly across his face. One dinner. Before either could continue, shouting suddenly erupted outside the office hallway. A loud, angry voice echoed nearby.
You can't throw us out like animals!
Elena immediately recognized the speaker. She rushed toward the doorway. Near the employee entrance, several airport workers argued with security guards while holding eviction notices. Maria stood among them crying quietly. Elena hurried closer. What happened? One worker turned angrily. The apartments near 8th Street got sold. Her stomach dropped. Those apartments housed dozens of airport employees, including Maria. The new owners want everyone out in 2 weeks. Another worker snapped bitterly. Apparently luxury condos matter more than working people. Maria wiped tears from her face. I don't know where I'm supposed to go. Elena immediately wrapped an arm around her. It'll be okay. Even she knew how impossible affordable housing had become. Lucas stepped beside them quietly while observing the scene. What building? A worker handed him the notice angrily, without recognizing who he was at first. The rich developers buying everything downtown. Lucas read the document once. Then his expression changed completely. Blackridge Holdings. The workers nodded bitterly. That company destroys neighborhoods. Lucas looked strangely still now. Vanessa appeared beside him again, looking uncomfortable. Sir. His eyes shifted toward her slowly. Tell me Hartwell Capital isn't financing this project. Silence. And suddenly Elena understood from Vanessa's face alone. Lucas's company was involved. The workers continued venting angrily around them, while realization settled heavily across his expression. Maria noticed his expensive suit and scoffed softly. People like you never understand what this does to families. Lucas looked at the eviction notices in silence. For the first time since becoming successful, the consequences of wealth stood directly in front of him wearing janitor uniforms and exhausted faces, and Elena watched the guilt hit him all over again. Lucas stood motionless while the airport workers argued around him. Eviction notices trembled slightly in Maria's hands as rain continued striking the terminal windows behind them. Elena watched his face carefully, searching for signs of the same cold detachment she had seen in wealthy executives before. Instead, she saw something worse. Real shame. Vanessa lowered her voice carefully. Sir, The Blackridge project is managed through subsidiary partnerships. Lucas looked at her sharply. Answer the question.
Yes,
She admitted quietly. Hartwell Capital partially financed the development. The silence that followed felt heavy enough to stop the entire hallway. Maria stared at Lucas without recognizing him yet. Of course, rich people are involved. Another worker laughed bitterly. They always are. Elena saw the tension tighten across Lucas's jaw. Everyone received notices today, he asked. Maria answered angrily. Families too. Elderly people. Single mothers. Nobody cares. Lucas looked down at the paper again. Then he asked the question nobody expected. How much time do they have? 2 weeks. His expression darkened immediately. That's impossible. Not when rich investors want faster profits. Another worker muttered. Vanessa shifted nervously beside him. Sir, this really isn't the appropriate place. Lucas cut her off without looking away from the notices. Cancel tomorrow's board meeting. Vanessa blinked in shock. What? You heard me. The London investors can survive disappointment. His voice carried an edge, now sharp enough to silence everyone nearby. Elena studied him carefully. This wasn't the polished billionaire from magazine covers anymore. This was the boy from Ashford Hills who used to fight classmates, twice his size, whenever someone bullied weaker kids. Lucas handed the eviction paper back slowly. What's the address? Maria frowned suspiciously. Why?
because I'm going there tonight?
One worker scoffed openly. To inspect what your money destroyed. Lucas met the accusation without defending himself.
Yes.
That answer surprised everyone, especially Elena. Vanessa stepped closer urgently. Sir, this situation requires legal coordination first. No. It requires human coordination first. The hallway fell quiet. Because people like Lucas Bennett rarely spoke that way. Airport employees exchanged confused looks while slowly recognizing the name attached to the man standing among them. One worker's eyes widened suddenly. Wait, Bennett. Another gasped softly. You're Lucas Bennett. Whispers spread instantly. Maria stared at Elena in disbelief. Your billionaire is The Lucas Bennett. Elena sighed quietly, apparently. The workers suddenly looked uncomfortable, after realizing they had openly insulted one of the richest men in the country. But Lucas seemed almost relieved by their honesty. They were right, he said calmly. People like me usually don't understand until damage becomes personal. His eyes shifted toward Elena briefly, and sometimes even then. The guilt in his voice settled heavily between them. Maria crossed her arms carefully. So what now? Lucas answered without hesitation. Nobody's getting thrown out in 2 weeks. Vanessa looked horrified. Sir, that project stops tonight. Legally you can't just. I own controlling interest. The quiet authority in his tone ended the argument instantly. Airport workers stared openly now. One man laughed nervously. You're serious? Lucas looked directly at him. Would you joke about families losing homes? Nobody answered, 'cause for the first time, they realized he meant every word. Elena watched him closely while conflicting emotions battled inside her chest. Part of her admired him all over again. Another part feared exactly how easy it still was to admire him. Lucas turned toward Vanessa. Call legal. Freeze all displacement notices immediately. Vanessa looked like she wanted to argue again, but thought better of it. Yes, sir. As she walked away making frantic phone calls, Maria shook her head slowly in disbelief. I've never seen a rich man stop listening to money before. Lucas gave a faint, humorless smile. Neither have I. The honesty behind the statement lingered painfully. Elena stepped slightly closer to him. You didn't know about the evictions. No. But your company financed them. Lucas looked exhausted suddenly. When businesses become large enough, stop showing you consequences. They show spreadsheets. The sentence felt painfully true. For years he built empires believing success automatically created progress. Now he was standing in an airport hallway, watching janitors panic about homelessness, connected to his own investments. And Alina could see the realization changing him in real time. A loud announcement echoed overhead while passengers continued rushing through nearby terminals, completely unaware of the lives unraveling beside them. Maria wiped her eyes tiredly. I should finish my shift before they fire me too. They won't, Lucas said immediately. She looked skeptical. You planning to buy the airport next? A faint smile touched his face. Not tonight. Some workers laughed softly for the first time since the eviction notices arrived. The tension eased slightly. Maria looked between Lucas and Alina, knowingly before walking away with the others. Soon the hallway emptied again, until only Elena and Lucas remained. He exhaled heavily while rubbing the back of his neck. I didn't realize how much damage can happen while sitting in conference rooms. Elena studied him carefully. You really didn't know? No. And now? His eyes met hers directly. Now I can't unknow it. Silence stretched quietly between them. Then Lucas looked at her janitor cart nearby. You've spent years around people struggling like this. Yes. And nobody helped. The sadness in his voice wasn't self-pity anymore. It was awakening. Elena answered honestly. Most people only notice workers when something isn't clean enough. He glanced around the terminal slowly. How did we build a world where kindness became invisible? The question sounded genuine. Elena gave a soft, sad smile. People get busy chasing survival. His eyes returned to her again. And what have you been chasing? She hesitated. Peace, mostly. Did you find it? No. The answer came too quietly. Lucas looked like he wanted to say something deeper. Instead he asked gently, what time does your shift officially end? Now, technically. Good. Elena raised an eyebrow slightly. You're still serious about dinner? I waited 15 years already. I'm not wasting another evening. Despite herself, warmth touched her chest again. Lucas noticed immediately. There's the smile I remember. She looked away quickly. You always noticed too much. Only where you were concerned. The dangerous sincerity returned to his voice. Elena grabbed her coat from the supply closet nearby, suddenly nervous in ways she hadn't felt since her 20s. Lucas watched quietly while she fixed her hair, using the reflection from a darkened office window. You're still beautiful, he said softly. Her breath caught unexpectedly. Nobody says things like that to airport janitors. Then everyone around here is blind. The words hit harder than they should have. Because after years of exhaustion, survival, and invisibility, Alina almost forgot what it felt like to be seen as a woman instead of labor. She cleared her throat quickly. Where are we going? Lucas smiled faintly. Somewhere quiet. 10 minutes later they exited the airport together, beneath cold evening rain. Luxury vehicles waited outside while security guards immediately opened umbrellas over Lucas. But he took the umbrella himself and held it above Elena instead. Reporters near the entrance instantly noticed. Cameras flashed aggressively. Mr. Bennett. Who's the woman? Are you dating?
Elena, look this way!
She froze in panic. Lucas immediately stepped protectively closer. No photos, he said firmly. Security guards moved quickly to block cameras, while Lucas guided Elena toward the car. Inside the vehicle, she finally exhaled shakily. I hate attention. Lucas looked apologetic. I forgot they follow me everywhere sometimes. That's your normal life, unfortunately. Rain streaked softly across the tinted windows, while the city lights blurred outside. For several quiet moments neither spoke. Then Elena looked toward him carefully. You really stopped the project? Yes, just like that. Lucas leaned back against the seat tiredly. No. Tomorrow there'll be lawyers, investors, media backlash, financial consequences. Then why do it? He looked at her for a long moment before answering. Because once upon a time, a girl from Ashford Hills taught me success means nothing if innocent people suffer beneath it. Emotion tightened unexpectedly in Elena's chest. You remembered that too. I told you. I remember everything. The car moved through downtown Chicago while rain reflected gold and silver across wet streets outside. Eventually, Elena glanced around nervously. This car is probably worth more than my apartment. Lucas smiled slightly. Probably. You used to drive a truck held together by duct tape. It exploded eventually. She laughed softly despite herself. There's the laugh, he said quietly. The way he looked at her afterward made her immediately glance toward the window again, 'cause deep down, Elena realized something dangerous. Lucas Bennett never stopped loving her, and worse, some part of her never stopped loving him either. The realization terrified her. People like Lucas existed in worlds filled with power, cameras, investors, expectations. Like Alana survived paycheck to paycheck cleaning strangers' messes. Those lives did not fit together anymore, no matter what old feelings survived. As if sensing her thoughts, Lucas spoke gently.
You're getting quiet.
I'm thinking about how strange this is. His expression softened, seeing me again, seeing who we became. Rain tapped softly against the windows between moments of silence. Then Lucas asked carefully, Are you ashamed of your life? The question surprised her. No. Then why do you keep looking at yourself through everyone else's eyes? Elena frowned slightly. What does that mean? It means every time you mention being a janitor, your voice changes like you're apologizing for existing. The observation hit too accurately. She looked away. You don't understand what it feels like being invisible for years. Lucas's voice lowered quietly. Yes, I do. She blinked. I became rich, Elena. Not loved. The sadness behind the sentence filled the car heavily. He continued staring out at the rain. Most people around me want access. Opportunities. Influence. Nobody talks honestly anymore. Elena watched him carefully. You're lonely. He laughed softly without humor. Painfully. Something about hearing that from a billionaire felt surreal, but also strangely believable. Success had given Lucas power, not peace. The car finally slowed beside a quiet restaurant overlooking the river. Elegant lights glowed warmly through large windows while soft piano music drifted outside. Elena immediately looked down at her clothes. No. Lucas frowned slightly. What?
I can't go in there dressed like this.
You look fine, Lucas. Only then did he fully notice the anxiety crossing her face. Years of wealth had made him forget how intimidating luxury spaces could feel for someone struggling financially. Without hesitation, he spoke gently. Then we'll go somewhere else. She blinked in surprise. You'd leave this place because of me. I'd leave anywhere because of you. The answer came naturally, dangerously naturally, and Elena suddenly realized tonight wasn't casual for him at all. Not even close. Lucas instructed the driver to keep moving without even glancing back at the expensive restaurant. Elena watched him quietly while city lights reflected across the car windows beside them. You really don't care where we eat. I care who I'm eating with. The simplicity of the answer made her chest tighten again. She looked down at her hands quickly. After years of feeling invisible, kindness suddenly felt almost unbearable. The car drove deeper into the city until towering buildings slowly gave way to older neighborhoods filled with small cafes and quiet bookstores, glowing beneath warm lights. Finally, Lucas leaned forward slightly. Stop here. The driver pulled beside a small diner, tucked between a laundromat and a flower shop. Neon lights flickered softly through the rain-covered windows. Elena blinked in surprise. You chose this place. Lucas smiled faintly. You used to love diners. That was 15 years ago. You still order pancakes for dinner when stressed. Her eyes widened slightly. You remember too much. I remember the important things. They stepped out beneath light rain and hurried inside together. The diner smelled like coffee and fresh bread. Old jazz music played quietly overhead, while only a few customers occupied booths near the windows. For the first time all evening, nobody recognized Lucas, nobody stared, nobody whispered, and Alina visibly relaxed. A waitress approached carrying menus before freezing briefly at Lucas's face. Then, surprisingly, she simply smiled politely. By the window. Perfect, Lucas answered. They slid into opposite sides of the booth, while rain rolled softly down the glass beside them. For several seconds they simply looked at each other awkwardly. Then both laughed quietly at the same time. What? Elena asked, shook his head. This feels impossible. It kind of is. The waitress returned for drink orders. Elena said automatically. Lucas smiled. Extra sugar. Elena looked embarrassed. You remembered that too. You used to steal sugar packets from cafes because you couldn't afford desserts. She laughed softly. I can't believe you remember things like that. Lucas's expression softened deeply. Elena, there were years when memories of you were the only good part of my day. The honesty in his voice silenced her completely. The waitress returned with coffee while tension lingered heavily between them. Once they were alone again, Alina stirred sugar slowly into her cup. So, she said carefully, how exactly does someone from Ashford Hills become a billionaire? Leaned back slightly. Obsession. Luck. Insomnia. That sounds unhealthy. It was, he explained quietly, how he started with a failing cargo company after college, sleeping inside airport offices while negotiating contracts during the day. He described losing almost everything during his first major expansion and rebuilding from debt twice. Alina listened carefully. You worked that hard because you were afraid of being poor again. Lucas looked surprised by how quickly she understood. Yes, fear can build powerful people. It can also destroy them. Silence settled briefly. Then Alina smiled faintly. You still overwork yourself. You still read me too easily. The waitress returned for food orders. Elena hesitated over prices until Lucas quietly closed the menu. Order what you actually want. She looked embarrassed. Old habits. I know. Eventually she ordered pancakes after all. Lucas grinned immediately. You remembered, she pointed accusingly. Don't start looking smug. I'm enjoying being right. For a moment they looked strangely young again, like the years apart had briefly disappeared. Then Alina noticed several missed calls flashing across Lucas's phone lying on the table. Your business seems angry tonight. It usually is. You should answer. I'm busy. With me? Yes. The certainty in his answer made her heartbeat stumble again. Alina looked toward the rain outside. You really never forgot me. Lucas became quiet. Then he spoke carefully. There were nights in New York when I'd finish 18-hour shifts and still drive past parks because they reminded me of Ashford Hills. She listened silently. I kept thinking if I became successful enough, eventually life would make sense again. And did it? No. The answer came instantly. He looked directly into her eyes now. Because the whole time I was building everything, the person I wanted to share it with was gone. Emotion rose unexpectedly in Elena's throat. She quickly reached for coffee to steady herself. You shouldn't say things like that. Why? Because people like me believe them. Lucas leaned forward slightly. I'm counting on that. The intensity between them became almost unbearable. Alina forced herself to change subjects. What happened with your fiancé? A shadow crossed his expression immediately. Her family owned investment firms. We made sense on paper. But not in reality. No. He stared briefly at the untouched coffee in front of him. She loved events, appearances, social circles. I spent most dinners feeling like a business acquisition. Elena frowned softly. That sounds lonely. It was easier pretending with her than admitting who I actually wanted. Her breath caught slightly. She knew about you. Elena blinked in surprise. What? You came up whenever I drank too much or got nostalgic. Despite herself, she laughed quietly. So I ruined your engagement accidentally. You exposed it honestly. The waitress arrived with food before emotions deepened further. For several minutes, they ate quietly, while warm diner light softened the tension around them. Elena asked something she'd wondered all evening. Why didn't you marry anyone else? Lucas answered without hesitation. Because every woman eventually became someone who wasn't you. The sentence settled heavily between them. Alina looked down immediately at her plate. Nobody had spoken to her with that kind of naked honesty in years. Maybe ever. The dangerous part was hearing how true it sounded. Finally, she whispered carefully. You can't still love a memory. Lucas studied her face gently. Good thing you're sitting right here then. Her chest tightened painfully. Outside, rain continued falling steadily against dark city streets, while the diner glowed quietly around them. Elena realized she hadn't felt this peaceful in years. No shouting neighbors. No overdue bills. No pretending strength for everyone else. Just warmth coffee, and the boy she once planned an entire future beside. The realization scared her deeply, because happiness could become dangerous when you stopped expecting it. Lucas noticed the shift in her expression immediately. What happened? She shook her head softly. I'm trying not to forget reality. And what reality is that? That tomorrow morning you'll still be Lucas Bennett. And you'll still be Elena Carter. It's not the same. His eyes softened sadly. You still think money changed what mattered? It changes everything around people. He considered that quietly, then nodded once. You're right. The honesty surprised her. Lucas continued softly. Money changes how the world treats you. It changes access, protection, opportunity. Elena listened carefully. It doesn't change who feels like home. The sentence landed directly in her chest. Before she could respond, loud voices suddenly erupted near the diner entrance. 3 men entered laughing drunkenly, while shaking rainwater from jackets. One of them immediately recognized Lucas. Holy hell. The man nudged his friend hard. That's Lucas Bennett. Within seconds, phones appeared. The peaceful atmosphere disappeared instantly. The men approached excitedly. Mr. Bennett, can we get a photo? Lucas's expression tightened slightly. Not tonight. Come on, man. Just one. The cameras kept flashing anyway. Elena immediately looked uncomfortable. One man finally noticed her janitor uniform folded beside the booth. His smile changed subtly. You here with airport staff. Lucas's eyes cooled instantly. She's with me. The man laughed awkwardly. Obviously. But the look he gave Alina carried quiet judgment. The kind she knew too well. Lucas noticed immediately, and something dangerous shifted in his face. I think you should leave now, he said calmly. The men hesitated. One scoffed softly. Relax. We were just asking. Lucas stood slowly from the booth. He wasn't aggressive. That somehow made him more intimidating. I said leave. The entire diner fell silent. Finally, the men backed off awkwardly before exiting again into the rain. Exhaled slowly after the door closed. You didn't have to do that. Yes, Lucas said quietly, sitting again. I did. She looked at him carefully. You always hated when people looked down on others. I still do. Something about the protectiveness in his voice affected her more deeply than she wanted. Lucas noticed, then softened slightly. You okay? She nodded slowly. I just forgot what it feels like having someone stand beside me. The sadness in her answer hit him visibly. Without thinking, he reached across the table gently. His fingers brushed hers. Both froze instantly. 15 years disappeared beneath that small touch. Elena's pulse quickened painfully. Lucas looked at her hand beneath his like something precious he thought he lost forever. Neither moved away. Finally he spoke quietly. You know what the worst part was. What? Becoming successful without anyone who remembered who I used to be. Emotion burned behind Elena's eyes unexpectedly, because she understood exactly what he meant. The world saw Lucas Bennett the billionaire. She still saw the stubborn teenage boy who skipped lunch to help neighbors fix broken fences. And somehow, after all these years, that boy was still there. She squeezed his hand lightly before realizing what she was doing. Lucas's eyes lifted slowly to hers. The air between them changed instantly. Deeper now. More dangerous. Elena pulled her hand back gently. We shouldn't rush this. Lucas nodded immediately. I know. But neither looked away. Outside the diner window, rain finally began slowing across the city. Hours seemed to pass unnoticed while they continued talking quietly about old memories, lost years, pieces of themselves nobody else understood anymore. For the first time in forever, Elena laughed naturally. Really laughed. And every single time she did, Lucas looked at her like hearing it healed something broken inside him. Eventually the waitress approached carefully. We're closing soon. Elena blinked in surprise at the late hour. Oh, wow. Lucas smiled faintly. Guess we talked too long. The waitress handed the bill toward Lucas before pausing. You know, she said, softly to Elena, it looked miserable when you walked into this place. Then she smiled toward Lucas. Now he looks human again. After she walked away, silence settled briefly between them. Lucas stared at the table thoughtfully. She's not wrong. Elena studied him quietly. What are we doing, Lucas? He met her eyes directly, trying to find our way back. The answer scared her because of how badly she wanted it too. The rain had stopped completely by the time they stepped outside the diner. Chicago shimmered beneath wet streetlights, while cold night air wrapped softly around the city. For a moment neither moved toward the car waiting nearby. The evening had changed something between them. Not repaired, not resolved, reopened, and both of them felt it. Lucas glanced toward Elena carefully. You're cold. I'm okay. Without hesitation, he removed his coat and gently placed it around her shoulders anyway. The warmth of it carried his cologne faintly, instantly pulling old memories from places she spent years trying to bury. You still do that? She murmured softly. Do what? Take care of people before they ask. His expression darkened slightly with regret. Not the ones who mattered most. Elena looked at him carefully beneath the streetlights. You really blame yourself for everything that happened to me. Yes, I left. You shouldn't. You were 19. I still left. The guilt inside him felt old, deep, something he carried silently for years. Elena exhaled slowly.
You know what the strange part is?
What? For years I imagined seeing you again, just so I could tell you how much you hurt me. Lucas went still, but now she looked away toward the city lights. Now I mostly feel sad we both lost so much time. The honesty landed heavily between them. Lucas stepped slightly closer. We don't have to lose more. The way he said it made her heart ache. Because some reckless part of her wanted to believe him completely. But life had taught Alina something dangerous about hope. It could destroy you faster than grief. The driver opened the car door quietly behind them. Lucas looked toward her gently. "Let me take you home." Alina hesitated. "My apartment isn't exactly. I don't care." Still uncertain, she finally nodded and climbed inside. The car drove through quieter neighborhoods, now while midnight settled across the city. Alina grew increasingly self-conscious as they approached the poorer side of town. "You don't have to walk me up," she said quickly. "I know." But his expression already told her he planned to anyway. 10 minutes later, the car stopped outside a worn brick apartment building beside an old grocery store with flickering lights. Lucas stared quietly through the window. "This is where you live." Alina immediately heard the pain in his voice and stiffened. "It's temporary? How long? 2 years?" His jaw tightened slightly. The building clearly hadn't been maintained properly in decades. Several windows were cracked. Paint peeled near the entrance. One hallway light flickered constantly above the door. Alina suddenly felt ashamed in ways she hated. "You don't have to look so horrified." Lucas turned toward her immediately. "I'm horrified life put you here, not embarrassed by you." The sincerity in his voice softened something painful inside her. Still, she looked away. Most people with money don't understand places like this. Then most people with money are blind. He stepped out first and held the umbrella over her while they walked toward the entrance. Inside, the hallway smelled faintly of old pipes and cheap detergent. Distant shouting echoed from another apartment upstairs. Lucas looked around quietly while Alina avoided his eyes. "This is why you work overtime constantly," he realized softly. "Rent rises every year, and nobody fixes anything." "No." They climbed narrow stairs slowly until reaching apartment 3B. Alina stopped outside the door awkwardly. Well, neither wanted the night to end. That much felt painfully obvious now. Lucas shoved his hands into his pockets slightly. "Can I ask something selfish?" She smiled faintly. "That depends. Would it make you uncomfortable if I called tomorrow?" The carefulness in his voice touched her unexpectedly. This wasn't arrogance. He was genuinely afraid of pushing too hard. Alina studied him quietly beneath the dim hallway light. "I think," she admitted softly, "I'd be disappointed if you didn't." Relief crossed his face immediately. "Good." A soft silence followed. Then Lucas reached into his wallet and handed her a black business card. His personal number was written across the back in ink. "Not my assistant. Not an office line. Me." Alina looked at the card carefully. "You trust me with billionaire secrets." "I trust you with everything." The words hit too deeply. She looked up slowly, and suddenly they stood much closer than before, close enough for her to notice the tiredness beneath his eyes. Close enough for him to notice the way she still held her breath around him. Neither moved. The tension between them became almost unbearable. Lucas lifted one hand carefully, like he was afraid she might disappear if he moved too fast. His fingers brushed gently against a strand of hair near her cheek. "Alina." The way he said her name felt dangerously intimate. She should have stepped back. Instead, she whispered softly, "What?" For several seconds, he simply looked at her, then admitted quietly, "I've wanted to find you for years." Emotion rose painfully in her throat. "So why didn't you?" Lucas's expression tightened. "Because, after enough time passes, you start believing maybe the people you love are happier without you." The vulnerability in his voice shattered something inside her defenses. Before thinking, Alina reached up and touched his face gently. Lucas closed his eyes briefly against her hand like the contact itself hurt. And in that moment she realized the truth. He had suffered too. Not the same way. Not with poverty or grief or eviction notices. But loneliness had carved through him just as deeply. When his eyes opened again, they looked unbearably honest. I never stopped loving you. The confession arrived quietly, without performance, without hesitation, and somehow that made it even more devastating. Elena felt tears burn suddenly behind her eyes. Lucas, I know it's complicated. You disappeared. I know. You broke my heart. Pain flashed openly across his face. I know. The raw acceptance in his voice made anger impossible, 'cause he wasn't defending himself. He was mourning too. A long silence stretched between them before Elena finally whispered the truth she'd been fighting all night. You still have mine. Lucas stared at her like he stopped breathing completely. What? My heart, she said softly, tears finally escaping. You still have it, and I hate that you do. The honesty broke whatever distance remained between them. Lucas stepped closer immediately. Elena, she laughed shakily through tears. I spent years trying to forget you, years convincing myself you became someone else. His voice lowered almost painfully. And did I? She looked directly into his eyes. No. That's the problem. Emotion hit him visibly. Before either could overthink it further. Kissed her. Slowly. Carefully. Like someone touching something precious after believing it lost forever. The moment his lips touched hers, 15 years collapsed completely. Elena's hands tightened instinctively against his shirt, while old love crashed back into her chest all at once. Nothing about the kiss felt rushed. It felt remembered. Familiar. Home. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing unevenly, the hallway around them felt strangely unreal. Lucas rested his forehead gently against hers. I should have done that 15 years ago. Elena laughed softly through remaining tears. You were awkward at 17. I'm still awkward. No, she whispered. Now you're terrifyingly confident. His smile appeared slowly. Only because I know exactly what I want now. The look in his eyes made her heartbeat stumble again. But before emotions could deepen further, loud footsteps interrupted upstairs, followed by shouting from another apartment. Reality returned instantly. Elena stepped back slightly. I should go inside. Lucas nodded reluctantly. Right. Neither moved, though. Neither wanted goodbye. Finally, Elena smiled softly. You're really calling tomorrow. I'm showing up tomorrow. That sounds dangerous. For who? For my ability to think clearly around you. His grin widened slightly for the first time all evening. There's the girl I remember. She rolled her eyes gently. And there's the boy who flirted constantly. I was terrible at flirting. You told me my eyes looked like sad poetry. Lucas laughed quietly. In my defense, I was 17 and dramatic. You're still dramatic. Maybe. At least now I can afford better lines. She laughed again, softer this time. God, he missed that sound. Eventually, Elena unlocked her apartment door slowly, then paused before entering.
Lucas? Yes?
Thank you. His expression softened immediately. For what? For finding me before life convinced me nobody ever would. Emotion crossed his face too quickly to hide. He stepped forward once more and kissed her forehead gently. I'm not losing you again. The promise settled deeply between them. Then Elena disappeared inside the apartment, while Lucas remained standing alone in the dim hallway afterward. For several moments he simply stared at the closed door, overwhelmed, because after 15 empty years chasing success across cities and boardrooms, he finally found the one thing money never replaced. Meanwhile, inside the apartment, Elena leaned back against the door, breathing shakily. The small room around her looked exactly the same. Second-hand furniture, unpaid bills near the kitchen counter, old water stains across the ceiling. But somehow everything felt different now, because hope had returned, and hope terrified her. She moved slowly toward the bedroom window, overlooking the street below. Lucas still stood outside near the black car, waiting silently beneath streetlights. As if he couldn't quite leave yet either. A few seconds later his phone lit up. Elena looked down at the business card, still clutched in her hand, before typing carefully, "Go home, billionaire. Some of us have work tomorrow." Down below, Lucas checked the message, then smiled wider than he had in years. His reply came instantly. "Can't sleep. Busy thinking about a janitor." Elena laughed softly despite herself. Terrible flirting, still dramatic. Another reply. "Still in love with you, though." Her chest tightened painfully. Outside, Lucas finally looked up toward her apartment window. Even from the street below, she could see the softness in his expression. For the first time in years, neither of them felt lonely anymore. Morning came with pale sunlight, pushing through Elena's thin curtains, but she had barely slept. She woke with Lucas's coat still folded over the chair, his card on the table, and his last message glowing in her mind like a secret. For years, mornings had meant bills, tired feet, and silence. Today, for the first time, it felt like something was waiting for her. Port. Everything had changed. Workers whispered when she passed. Some smiled, others stared as if she had suddenly become important overnight. Maria rushed toward her and pulled her into a hug. He stopped the eviction. Maria cried. "The notices are frozen. Lawyers called before sunrise." Elena looked across the terminal and saw Lucas standing near the glass wall. No cameras, no assistants, just him. He smiled when their eyes met. Later that morning, he stood before the airport staff and reporters. "Yesterday I saw people who keep this city moving treated like they were invisible," he said. "That ends now." He announced worker housing protections, scholarships, emergency rent support, and a new foundation led by Elena. Crowd turned to her. Elena trembled at the microphone. "I'm not special," she said softly. "I'm just one of many people who kept working while hoping someone would notice." Lucas watched her with tears in his eyes. "You were never invisible to me," he whispered. Months later, Elena no longer pushed a cleaning cart. She walked through the same airport wearing a simple navy dress, helping workers enroll in classes, find homes, and rebuild dreams they had buried under survival. And every evening, Lucas waited near Gate 24 with coffee and extra sugar. 1 year later, they returned to Ashford Hills. Beside the old lake, Lucas took her hand and said, "I lost you once because I chased the future without you. I won't make that mistake again." Elena smiled through tears. "Then don't promise me a perfect life." He kissed her hand. "I promise you a real one, under the same sky where two poor teenagers once dreamed of escape." Elena finally believed him. Because love had found its way back, not through money, not through status, but through two hearts that had taken the long road home.